Um, it's pretty good. Final Fantasy XVI is the latest installment in the long-running JRPG series, one which has been going since 1987, and whose name gets funnier with every new entry. For those unfamiliar, each entry is a new story. You do not need to play Final Fantasies 1 through 15 to understand this one, something that the marketers really want you to understand, as this one has been seemingly designed to be a sort of entry point to the series, an old dog trying a mix of both old and new tricks. This entry takes place in the realm of Valisthea, centering on two island continents in which various empires, duchies, and kingdoms fight for the control of the Mother Crystals, gigantic conduits of shimmering magical energy placed throughout the region, granting life, prosperity, and magical capabilities to those born without inherent magical talent. Those born with inherent magical talent, however, are known as bearers, and are often branded and forced into slavery. However, there are also beings known as dominants, people who claim a special connection to the icons, which are basically the physical manifestation of powerful demigods. The presence of a dominant and their corresponding icon is enough to sway a court or change the tide of battle, and many are given a place of honor when it comes to war-making or politicking, which is good, because the world is dying to something called the Blight, and there's a lot of war-making and politicking going on as people fight for control of the remaining viable land. Our story centers on Clive Rossfield, an underwear model / scion of the Duchy of Rosaria, whose younger brother Joshua is heir to the throne and dominant of the Icon of Fire, Phoenix. The game begins shortly before a fateful evening when Clive, his brother, and father the Duke are attacked on the border of Rosaria. In his despair, Clive calls forth a long-forgotten and supposedly non-existent second Icon of Fire, the Icon Ifrit. You see, each icon is based on a summon, a powerful monster you could call upon in previous Final Fantasy games to assist you in battle. In 16, they're finally given center stage for one glorious purpose, making them kill each other in really cool giant monster fights. Unfortunately, the first one Clive kills is his own brother, which obviously causes him some issues, and his story runs the gauntlet from living as a slave, to joining a rebellion with his childhood friend, to waging war against the various empires, their dominants, and the Mother Crystals themselves. The story itself is honestly nothing to write home about. The stakes are established rather early on, and most of the elements at play are rather common tropes to the genre, without any of the playful subversion or astute observations that would make such a story anything more than competent. Though there are some smart choices made in the details, which personally I'd have liked to see more of. Anyone who's ever played a JRPG can tell you more or less how the story is going to end by roughly the 25% mark. Now, a very trope-heavy main story isn't exactly a bad thing. Dragon Quest XI, another JRPG in a long-running series run by Square Enix, used a common Chosen One narrative to present a quirky and colorful story full of charming characters. The relative simplicity of the overarching plot allowing those characters and the goofball world they inhabit to fully shine through. Final Fantasy XVI, despite copying from the same playbook to make a kind of gateway entry meant to appeal more to newer players, doesn't quite take the same advantage. There's an attempt to do some Game of Thrones-esque political intrigue, but it generally only works to a point due to our need to focus primarily on Clive's point of view. As such, we generally miss the major strength of that series, which is a very well-developed, expansive main cast with their own strong POVs and interesting intersecting storylines. The supporting cast are all well-written and well-performed, certainly, but there's never a moment where they feel fully developed, and by the end I felt like I wanted more time with all of them, if only so I'd get to truly caring about any of them. That said, none of them are offensive or unpleasant. The worst that can be said about any of them is that they're a little boring. And in fact, many of them are charming and interesting in what little screen time they're given, even if that charm ends the second that they leave the screen. But, in a series known for its rich characterization of eclectic casts, it's more than a bit disappointing that Clive, our main character, is the most interesting almost by default. Where the story does excel, however, is in its presentation, and most importantly during the climactic icon battles. Final Fantasy as a series has always been known for pushing the boundaries of visual presentation, and the visuals on display in 16 are never anything short of dazzling. with everything from verdant forest to desolate wastelands rendered in gorgeous detail. The fantastical battles between icons are of immense scale and effect, with artfully rendered details giving life to these battling behemoths in a way that would have been impossible with console technology only a decade ago. Accompanying these visuals is a sweeping score that seems to act and react in time with what's happening on screen, making small battles feel meaningful, but making the larger battles feel properly exciting. This all combines with the fantastic performances of the actors really giving it their all, allowing these climactic battles their full, spectacular weight and dramatic heft, even if the often slow and uneven pacing of the lead up to them means that the moments don't feel entirely earned. The biggest swing the game takes is honestly in the combat, which has traded the classic turn-based or semi-active systems of the previous games for a full-action combat system akin to character action games like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta. While it doesn't quite hit a home run, it does at least hit a double, offering up frenetic action and a sizable kit of abilities that allow you a myriad of options in combat. With every icon you defeat, you gain access to their abilities, allowing you a new special move in addition to cooldown abilities which you can add into your combos and eventually mix and match as you see fit. The system as it stands is a good start, though it ultimately pales in comparison to the depth offered by the aforementioned Devil May Cry or Bayonetta. Despite your options and icons, Clive is limited to a single moveset and weapon in his broadsword, and a generally low enemy variety in normal encounters means that many battles outside of boss fights tend to play out similarly. Also, despite the JRPG window dressing, there are no elemental weaknesses or strengths, nor are there status ailments. A fireball attack does the same damage to a plant enemy as a rock projectile or an icicle projectile, and you never have to contend with afflictions like blindness, poison, sleep, or any of the other status ailments typical to the series or genre. Adding to this is the fact that Clive is the only playable character. Despite often accompanying you on the journey, you never have the option to control or even command party members like Jill, Sid, Gav, or your dog party member Torgal, who really just serves as an extension of Clive's moveset. Luckily, Clive's kit is expansive enough, manipulable enough, and simply fun enough that additional party members aren't strictly necessary. But it's yet another step away from the gameplay conventions of JRPGs and of the series prior that ultimately feels disappointing. As an action game, 16 is pretty good. As a JRPG, it's almost frustratingly bad. That said, I'd personally like to see this system return and be expanded on, preferably with a better mix of JRPG elements, whether that's in 17 or 16.2 or something with an equally stupid name. There's a crafting mechanic as well, but it's really more of a word than it is a gameplay element. It's really just a way to buy items with drops, as opposed to spending money. A way to justify the hundreds of monster teeth, or wolf pelts, or magic dildos that you get from killing stuff and completing side quests, which themselves are inoffensive, if a bit uninteresting gameplay-wise, but which often contain solid moments of lore and world building which generally make them worthwhile. The game also contains a genuinely fantastic mechanic it calls active time lore, which allows you to pull up an in-game encyclopedia at just about any time to refresh yourself on the details of the plot, character biographies, and critical lore elements. It's the kind of storytelling mechanic that only a video game could reasonably include, and more games really should include something like it, especially those trying to be sweeping fantasy epics. All this said, I do recommend the game, but you must be aware of exactly what it is that you're getting. Final Fantasy XVI is a game that wants to dazzle you with spectacle, and which honestly does a fantastic job at it. Despite its JRPG packaging, however, it's an action game first and foremost, one which will serve as a great welcome to newcomers of the genre, while giving veterans something new and interesting to play with, even if it could have done more with its mechanics. The story itself is serviceable at worst, anchored by great performances and peaking with moments of genuine delight. Momentary mountaintops which weave together fantastic visuals and music, with great gameplay and perfect synchronicity. It's just unfortunate that those mountaintops are so far above and beyond the rest of the experience. Ultimately, Final Fantasy XVI is a good game that could have been great. One worth playing, if only to see the old dog try a new trick. I said I'd do a Resident Evil thing. Sorry, I lied. I wanted to do a review of this game because I've been playing it for the past month. So, I don't know. I hope you like it. I'll probably be doing more stuff like this. Why not? Who cares? The world's ending, right? Thank you very much for watching. Have a good one.